Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Cabin. I'm your host, Joey Leone. And today I got a little story about when you meet someone only once, a chance meeting, and it stays with you for the rest of your life. About 4 years ago, we were on tour and we were doing our usual concerts and casino shows, and we were also doing a lot of the library shows, which a lot of you know I've done hundreds of library shows where I do the history of the blues in America, history of rock and roll. And on this particular Sunday early show, we were in the basement of a church in Nebraska. And I was doing, I think it was the history of the blues show. And we were preparing for the show, and the people were starting to come in, as they do for these library shows. Many of them are elderly people, I'd say people above 65. And they come in to enjoy the music and hear a little history, although many times they don't realize that they're going to hear some history. But many of them show up because they know it's going to be a musical show, and a lot of times at the libraries, it's authors giving these presentations. So at this one day, we were doing the show, and I was preparing, and the people are coming in, and three people walked in, and they were just very distinguished from the minute they walked in. A lot of these Midwest shows, the people are very well dressed, and they're really kind of really good-hearted, Midwestern people. But this particular little family of people came in, and it was a husband, a wife, and what eventually found out was a son. And I would say the husband and wife were probably in their late 70s, early 80s. But they were very well dressed. And the woman in particular was wearing it looked like to me, really nice handmade clothes. And she had this beautiful crocheted or knitted hat and a beautiful scarf. And she was a beautiful older woman. And as I started to do the show, obviously I do the beginning, and everybody was nice and quiet while I was doing my little talk and presentation. And then it started the music. And then a lot of times at these shows, people will sing along with these songs, because the whole idea of the History of the Blues show is that it's not just the history of the blues, and it's not just blues music, it's the music that the blues influenced in American popular culture and popular music. And I'm very proud to be able to introduce people to the fact that it's not just the blues, but its effect on country music and rockabilly and rhythm and blues and rock and roll and jazz even. So as I'm starting to do the songs, people are really enjoying it, as they always do. And but this particular woman was really kind of just locked in, and it looked like she was not missing any of the nuance of the show or any of what I was doing. And she was mouthing along with the lyrics of the songs, like she knew all these songs. And in that show, it's a Sam Cooke song, it's Stagger Lee by Lloyd Price, it's some Elvis Presley, it's some Johnny Cash, there might be a Merle Haggard tune in there, there might be a Louis Jordan tune, as well as a Chuck Berry tune, and maybe some rock and roll. And so it was really going along very well. And this woman, I could tell, was really enjoying the show. She was singing some of the songs, but not where you could really hear her, but she was mouthing every lyric. And so the show winds up, and there's maybe 30, 35 people in the place, which is a good turnout for a Sunday morning and early afternoon show in Nebraska. And as would be my custom most of the time, as the show finishes up, people come up to the where I'm presenting it, whether it's a stage or whether it's just the corner of the library. And, they tell me they enjoyed the show, and I shake hands and I meet people and I make little silly jokes and just have a good time and just give people a personal approach, And about the third or fourth person up there are these three people. And I could see that they just had this look on their face of extreme happiness and glee. And I was like, oh, you enjoyed the show. And immediately the woman grabbed my hand and held it really firmly. And she was a small woman, thin, and she looked me straight in the eye and she said, I love that music you did, and I knew every song. I remembered every song you did. And I was like, oh, well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. And she was still holding onto my hand. And she was like, oh, it was great. I knew every song. I remembered every song. I was like, great. And about the third time she told me that she remembered the song, I realized that there's something else going on here. And the husband, who was a tall gentleman with a nice cowboy hat on and a big belt and some pressed jeans and a pressed shirt, and the son was well dressed, he grabbed her hand and just gently, pulled her hand away from my hand. And he said, we love the show, and thank you so much. It meant so much to us. I was like, oh, well, thank you. And then the son turned to me and he said, my mother saw your picture in the paper. We live 100 miles from here. My mother saw your picture in the paper and said, I have to go see that man. I have to go see him. And they were like, well, that's the day we go to church, Mom. She goes, no, we can't go to church this week. We have to go see this man. And then I realized that she was suffering from dementia. And he said to me, that's the first time my mother said the word remember in years. I haven't seen her this alive and this connected to anything in the years that she's been getting worse and worse from her dementia. And boy, did that hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And they thanked me. She hugged me. And the husband had tears in his eyes. The son had tears in his eyes. And when they walked away, I had tears in my eyes, as I do right now. It was unbelievable. And it stayed with me. And I greeted the rest of the crowd as they left. And as we started to pack up the equipment, Earl and Sparky were there. And I just looked at them and I said, it just doesn't get any better than this. And it really didn't. And to this day, I'll remember that woman for the rest of my life. And I'll remember that day in that little church basement in Nebraska for the rest of my life, and how God has blessed me with these great memories. And the little kid from Brooklyn who sat in front of the TV for hours watching every musical thing, from my first musical exposure on TV, which was the great Liberace, who was my first favorite musician, to watching PBS and watching the rebroadcast of Arturo Toscanini and the great NBC orchestra. As a child, just everything musical just all came to a head on days like this. And although I've played around the world and I've played with many famous musicians and I've made a good, honest living being a musician, that is one of the top memories, and I wanted to share it with my friends and the folks tuning in to this little podcast here from the desert in Arizona. I hope you all have a great day, and may God bless each and every one of you. And thank you for tuning in to Tales from the Cabin. I'm Joey Leone. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.